Hey everyone! In this video I wanna share 10 RPGs that I consider are good starting points if you're not sure if this genre is for you. Now this comes from someone who used to play a lot of platformers, action games, bullet hells, shooters and so on. So I wanna share two kinds of approaches, between action RPGs and some turn-based RPGs. Beware that some games in this list will not be that friendly. I don't think that is the right way to encourage people to get into the genre, but showing the multiple facets RPG offers, with interesting gameplay and/or stories. Also keep in mind that there is no particular order in this list. Without further ado, let's jump into the first entry, Monster Hunter Rise Sombre. For those who don't consider Monster Hunter RPGs, just as a reminder, this thing was nominated for Best RPG, so be my guest. Now, I recommend this particular Monster Hunter because personally, and worth the redundancy, I am not a fan of clunky gameplay. Probably World is another good option if you wanna get into the series, but prior to that I consider they can be a bit annoying to play if you come from the particular background I explained before. This is an action RPG where its story is not that hard to follow, and not really the main dish, so you can focus directly into its gameplay, where you need to hunt different monsters in a quest-driven system, and as you hunt them you'll acquire materials to create new weapons and armor. Monster Hunter games are known for their hard learning curve, but don't worry, this is the easiest entry so far, and the community is quite active, so you can easily find tutorials to learn how to use weapons and tackle different kinds of quests. Just keep in mind that it is a bit grindy and repetitive, but excellent if you want to have a bit of adrenaline while playing. In the second entry, I will recommend Afterimage. This is a 2D action game with RPG elements and non-linear paths, or in other words, a Metroidvania. While there are many excellent games in this subgenre, oftentimes I consider they are sold as Metroidvanias, but there is only one path to follow. I would recommend those entries for beginners, but that is not the case here. In this story we are going to follow Rin and Ifrit, after the events of a great war between humans and Goliaths. While it could be considered an apocalyptic moment, this story is filled with a lot of life, and some ideas a bit hard to grasp. As I mentioned before, I recommend this game because it doesn't hold your hand the whole journey. The first 10 hours perhaps a bit, but after finding some basic skills, it lets you roam wherever you want or wherever you can. It depends how skilled you are, but that is something appreciated in real open worlds. Its combat system is rather simple at first, giving you the chance to choose between different weapons and equipment, so you can customize your adventure however you feel much more comfortable. But down the line, as you adventure, the challenges start to rise and using some skills and magics in between become perhaps a must. This is a good option if you want to tackle a real traditional Metroidvania. In the next entry I recommend Xenoblade Chronicles. This game is a hybrid between action RPG and turn-based, but I'll explain that in a moment. This story will present a fantasy tale where two huge mechs are fighting each other, fight that is left misunderstood, but don't worry, it will make sense down the line as we unfold the secrets of this world. Shulk along his friends will uncover the truth of the Bionis and Mechonis. This is another great starting point for those who want to get into RPGs, because it has a deep and engaging story with an excellent gameplay, where it is all about positioning while selecting skills, where ideally you link attacks with the team to exploit different weaknesses, and along the journey the game makes you play with different characters or under some circumstances, so it is quite entertaining. But also I will say, don't underestimate it, because while it may sound simple, you need to catch quickly which skills are better to use as they have to cool down. What's worth mentioning is that there are only a couple of moments where the adventure may be stagnant, but aside from that, this is an extraordinary RPG. In the fourth entry, I wanna throw an easy and childish game, Ever Oasis. This is definitely an easy action RPG for beginners. This game shares Tethys' story, young man who receives the help of the water spirit Esna to create an oasis after his brother is kidnapped, where also his oasis falls into chaos, so it is up to Thethu to gather people from other places to make the perfect oasis, while looking for clues of what happened to his brother. Here you will adventure into dungeons or some open areas in the desert, forming parties with up to 3 characters with particular skills as they belong to other species. Needless to say that those skills will help you to move forward in some dungeons, but also you need to help the people in the oasis gathering specific items and develop new shops. While some moments can be a bit boring while looking for particular items, that happens but a couple of times. Other than that, this is a short game that takes like 23 hours to finish. In the 5th place, Tales of Arise. Here we are going to follow Alphen, character who lives his existence without pain, forced on hard work as the Renans took control over Dana 3 centuries ago. However, Alphen will take the option to fight for freedom, and in the process get to know what's actually going on, not just in his planet, but beyond. Here I will say be prepared for a traditional Japanese story that swings quite well its narrative. Tales of Arise is an action RPG where you set different characters in your party, and as you fight enemies, it is all about finding the right balance between attacks and evasions. Of course, you will have the chance to change different characters who have different skills, strengths, and weaknesses, and as you advance, you'll explore a world full of surprises, visiting towns, completing some side quests, gathering weapons and equipment along the journey. While it takes a bit of time to finish, I definitely consider Tales of Arise as another excellent starting point into RPGs, because it combines perfectly well the latter with the action elements, which unfortunately not every action game accomplishes that quite well. In the 6th place for action games is 8th, Lacrimose of Dana. These titles can be played out of order, as they are kind of standalone stories. Sure, you will find some references here and there, but nothing to diminish the tale, or turn into something dull. As a classic adventure in Adol's repertory, another ship is going to be sunk, in this case because of a creature, so he ends up on the shore of a cursed island, where along new friends, Adol will look for another survivors and what lies behind his dreams about Dana. In this action RPG, we can control different characters along the journey, being able to change between them in a quick way, each character with unique skills and playstyle, where there are 3 different kinds of damage: slash, strike, and pierce. So you'll have to quickly decide which character is best for the enemies you are fighting, otherwise some battles can be a bit nerve-wracking. However, there are other interesting mechanics where if you avoid or parry in the right moment, you'll have some extra buffs. So yep, this is an action RPG that falls into the chaotic side. It may be a bottom masher, but if you wanna test your skills, this is one of those games worth playing in higher difficulties. In the first entry for turn-based RPGs, I recommend Octopath Traveler 2. This is another great starting point because it has several entertaining stories. It can be debatable that there is a lack of friendship or glue between those stories, but to get into the genre I don't consider it is needed to get into deep and complex stories. So this one accomplishes the objective quite well. You begin this journey by choosing the character you like the most, and from that point onwards, gathering other allies in different orders. Aside from that lack of real partnership, their particular tales are quite entertaining and engaging in different moments. Gameplay-wise, each character has something like an assigned job, where they have particular combat skills and field skills. For example, Ochet is able to capture monsters and use them in combat, or cook them, but also trigger fights against other people. Later down the line, you'll have the chance to assign secondary jobs to each character, further specializing their use in combat, where the boss fights are the main dish, having this system where they have different weaknesses, so you can break them after hitting that weakness a number of times. The catchy thing here is deciding when you are going to break them and go all out. This game is all about the strategy and finding the right balance between all the characters, as you will use them together down the line. In the next spot, Fire Emblem Awakening, famous strategic RPG where we will follow some events 2000 years after Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon and the Emblem of Light, where the MC of this story is found by Chrom, MC that joins the Shepherds after showing excellent strategic skills while defending a town. Chapters later they will be fighting against Plagian armies, finding that there are fearsome enemies pulling the strings behind scenes. Its gameplay, it's all about a kind of chess with different characters, having advantages and disadvantages against other units. While at first simple, as you advance, strategy will take an interesting approach once you have the chance to promote units, and fight against a lot of enemies, where you can pair allies in combat, but also out of it. While this story may not be the strongest point, Awakening brought a lot of extraordinary changes that the series needed. Mechanics used not only in Fates and Three Houses, but also in Gage, and most likely in the following entries. In the next turn-based system, Paper Mario, The Thousand Year Door, or Super Mario RPG. In my humble opinion, Mario RPG games are always fun to play around. The story is easy to digest and quite active gameplay, where you have to time inputs in the right moment, changing the classic turn-based idea into something much more enjoyable. While I would recommend the very first entries, it is also a good option to get into the remakes. Leaving some controversies aside, personally I prefer the Thousand Year Door, because it has a good balance between difficulty and it offers a classic JRPG adventure, where you find some allies along the journey and jump into entertaining gameplay, where every character has its particular way to play around. And this entry also works for beginners. And last but not least, Undernauts, Labyrinth of Yomi. If you've been around this channel, you know that first-person dungeon crawlers are a thing here. While it is true that they are seen as unfriendly for newbies, it is fair to say that this game is way far from the obnoxious old-school JRPGs. Its story is quite dark and interesting, where the director of this company had the chance to secure a district. However, they had no money to hire experts on the matter, so they had no more options than recruiting students, women, or anyone willing to become into an Undernaut. Perhaps not the best idea, as they get trapped down there, and it turns into a spiral of messy situations, turning this already risky way to get money into a nightmare. It takes some time to show the best moments in the story, but once you're around the third dungeon, it doesn't stop. Of course, if you're willing to read a little here and there. Gameplay wise, I recommend it because it is not overwhelming with the multiple units the game gives you the chance to create, and it guides you quite well in the character creation. And even if you miss some skills, you can always reselect them as you advance, and once you have the chance to promote your units, the strategy becomes into something much more interesting. Undernauts also offers interesting puzzles that sometimes require specific inputs or get clever riddles in some maps. It's worth saying that this is a recommendation to those who want to jump directly into old school approaches without turning the playing session into a tedious grindfest. As last notes, a word of advice: these are just recommendations. If you consider that there is a game that looks interesting to you, give it a try. You might find something enjoyable, or perhaps a new reason to not abandon the genres I mentioned at the beginning. I hope you found this video informative. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.